There are many ways to create this object in Vectorworks, but I've chosen a method which I think is easier for newer users to grasp. To begin with, I'm just going to create an initial template that I can use to start my design. These are just 2D objects. I'll begin with duplicating 2D loci on the straight line to give me some points. Then I'm going to select my NURBS curve and pick off the 8 points as well as the corner, if you want to call them points, of my 8-sided figure. On the very last flat, I will pick 2 points. Going to a plan view, I'm just going to do a little bit of reshaping before we begin using the reshape tool. I just sort of reform the circular entity of this project. Now we're going to reform the curve a little bit by rotating some of its points. I'm going to select some of the last points, and the very last point you'll see is where I can rotate the rest of them from. I'm going to bend the curve out about 20 degrees. Now we're going to add some extra points. Note the direction of the curve for starters. We're going to go to the 3D Power Pack and take Extend NURBS. See how the NURB is highlighted on the very end? I'm going to extend it just by a factor of 1. I'm using arbitrary units. So when I click OK, it will extend it by 1 arbitrary unit. Now I'm going to move that, I'm going to bend those points. I'm not going to take too much time. I'm going to put them in place and then just do that again. Select the curve and move my points into place. Now I'll need to do this again at the top. So the same process, select the curve, note the direction. I'm going to reverse it so that my point starts at the top. I can use my reshape tool and just begin to bend that over. You need to spend a little time reshaping it to your own liking. So now I'm going to duplicate this curve and move it over just 1 unit. Okay. And start to bend some points again. So on the new curve, I'm going to select these points, and just rotate them up. Working with that same curve and using the same process, I'm going to bend it out a little bit to give it its thickness, and then bend it in. Once again, you have to do a little bit of editing to get your curves to match. Even though your curves may appear matched, it's just, this is the last step I always do. I extend out each curve past the point where I want to work with it, and then just cut them all to the same length. So now I'm going to introduce some friends here. We got two NURBS curves and just two ordinary planar circles. We'll start with the NURBS curves first. But before that, I can create basically my shape by just using loft surface. It's going to give me a flat curve, and then using the shell tool, can shell it to a thickness. Checking inside, off, or on kind of gives you a little different perspective. I can leave it flat or then go to fillet and fillet the edges to give it more of a rounded look. Option number 2 is to use bi-rail sweep. Now if this is using, click on one rail and then this third one, it will give you the same flat curve, which you could then go through the same process as loft surface. But to get that sort of unique Spanset look, and we use bi-rail sweep again, I have a half turned NURBS curve here. Now notice I'm taking the right hand side, and when I render this, it renders it on the underneath side. I'm going to hide that. I'm going to do this again, but this time I'm going to click on the left hand side. And now it produces the top, or the other half of the curve, or the Spanset. As the initial curves are still there, if you wanted to add, for example, a bead on the outside of your Spanset, you can use extrude along a path with just a 2D planar circle and add a little decorative beading. And as we had sheared all our curves off a little earlier, I'm going to turn this sideways and use the mirror tool. It will create the final part of the Spanset.